Hey guys, coming back at ya. I was gonna do a strange video today. It was gonna be about genetics, but it's not gonna be about genetics because I don't know a lot about genetics. But it is about genetics. The reason why is because a lot of people ask me about it, and I don't know. I haven't, come up with my definitive thoughts and ideas and feelings and all that stuff about it. But, these are the basic building blocks that can determine / perpetuate various expressed, features. And I would say the way I look at that clinically is it all stemmed from the MTHFR phenomena, I think like 10 or 15 years ago. Back in the day, see, all this gimmicky stuff always has roots somewhere. So that was a gimmicky thing within the last 5 to 7 years, maybe even 10 years. I can't remember. But don't even ask me what MTHFR stands for, methylfolate something or another. I don't remember what it stands for. But it is kind of an important marker in a sense, genetic marker, because it kind of has some specificity towards folic acid metabolism. And folic acid is one of the B vitamins. It's B9 actually. And so the whole premise behind that actually came from psychiatry. It got popularized. So a little bit about that first was, there's a huge laundry list, panacea of functions that this does, only because folic acid or folate kind of runs the entire, well, it doesn't run the whole system, but it's like a pro-cellular form and function parameter, if you will. So if you've got messed up folic acid metabolism, or your cellular replication, DNA replication can kind of get messed up. So they used it in psychiatry because they found patients with problems with that. You can genetically test for it. They had more risks of X, Y, and Z, depression, anxiety, whatever it was. I can't remember. I think they went towards depression on that one. And so then they actually made a medicine, Deplin, I think it's Deplan, I forget. But anyway, to kind of like upregulate those pathways, because they found various significance with some of the mental health parameters. I think it was about depression. So anyway, so I always look for things genetically as, and I mean, trust me, genetics is like a whole vast field of stuff that personally I don't know too much about. I know clinically, I know some things. But if you have one copy of some of these markers that inhibit your body, you have upwards of a 30 to 40% deficiency in this particular case for folic acid processing. If you have a double copy, you have upwards of a 60 to 70% deficiency processing folic acid. So there are some clinical pearls to this, because obviously if the patient has a double copy, the problem with it is that so many foods are fortified with folic acid. If you have a double copy, then pouring folic acid into your body can be detrimental in some sense. Now they use that to prevent neural tube defect during pregnancy. So obviously you need a healthy supply of that going in either way, especially if you're pregnant. But so this is just talking about the various pathways that utilize folic acid. And so if you had a double copy, your system gets clogged up and messed up trying to process folic acid. So then the pharmaceutical companies and nutritional companies, they came out with folate, which is like if you will, like packaged or pre-digested form of folic acid turned into its final end product. The problem with it is you need the body biochemically to turn folic acid into folate. And so if those pathways are messed up, your body's not successful at converting it into a useful product for your cells. And that gets into like DNA replication and other things. Now, with that being said, all of the folate and all folic acid, all this stuff branches out into like a large multitude of health topics. I mean, like just beyond the scope of this video. But so I guess what I was going to say is, for any markers you're looking at, if you have no copies, then you're fine. Well, so these are markers that cause problems, you know, so there's probably markers that can help. But in this particular instance, having this genetic pattern causes problems. So no marker on MTHFR, and there's a couple of different varieties. There's a 677 copy that they say is a little bit worse. There's a 1298 copy that they say is slightly more benign, you know, so whatever. But I'm just trying to say is, if you have no copies, you're good. You can process folic acid, all the foods with folic acid, you're great. If you have one copy, 30 to 40% deficiency upwards, it doesn't mean you're manifesting. It means you have the propensity. And then double copies mean you have the theoretic propensity of not processing folic acid 70 to 80%. And that's just the thing. So, you know, I've seen some of these people use genetic markers to dictate clinical treatment. But I personally shy away from all that stuff because, you know, some core genetic markers have absolute consequences. But like in particular, some of these more functional markers like MTHFR, it doesn't mean that you're like automatically deficient 30 to 40%. It just means potentially you are. So there's a lot of markers within genetics that just gives you the potential. Like for instance, if there's some genetic markers for Parkinson's, you know, you have a single copy. You know, maybe your chances are 30 to 40% more likely to develop something like that. It's not written in stone. It doesn't mean it will happen. It doesn't mean it will activate. It doesn't mean it will launch and automatically it just means you're carrying a marker that theoretically could cause that. And so the same as with MTHFR. Theoretically, your folic acid processing is compromised. So anyway, I take those things with a grain of salt. It's definitely good to at least look into it and, you know, pay attention to that, perhaps. But it's not a death sentence. You know, it's not carved into stone. You don't know if these things will be activated or not. So a wide variety of stressors could possibly theoretically activate these things. Chronic illness, acute illnesses, infections, accidents, injuries, all sorts of things. You never know. The final remark I would say, this video is not really about MTHFR. It's really about just single copy, double copy / theoretic manifestation. Because so many people get hooked into it and they think it's a death sentence. It's not. It's just a theoretic potentiation there. So what was I going to say? So there's a lot of, you know, Ancestry.coms, 23andMe, genetic tests, etc. They like to check your ancestry, your lineage. I mean, and even that is potential. I ran the 23andMe on me, and it couldn't nail down where in Eastern Europe part of my lineage was from. It was all over the place. It was Hungary, Ukraine, Bulgaria, then it went to Czech Republic. Like, it didn't know. It kept changing its mind through the years. And that's because these things are not absolute. You can narrow it down, but you just don't know for sure. So, I mean, fine. You can go to a geneticist and talk to these people about these things, especially if you have like these very serious conditions that are genetically based. But when you're talking about functional genetics, there's just a potential there. But 23andMe can get you some raw data. And I tell people, if they're interested, you could always upload your data to a third-party site. I've used something called Promethease.com, and you can upload your raw data, and they'll kick out like a full medical database on you, your code. And honestly, the code has not been cracked completely, only partially. But it will definitely give you a searchable database of all the things that are known up to this point that are good and bad about you genetically, including the MTHFR. There's other COMT, there's all sorts of other ones you can look into. But, so check that out. I've done that before. I thought it was quasi-useful. But I've seen practitioners use these genetic markers as definitive evidence about what kind of, supplements and other things you should take. And I'd have to say, there's not a lot of validity to that in any capacity, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe some in some degree, but not a lot. So take it with a grain of salt. Feel free to explore your genetics, explore what genes are mapped out and which ones you have. And I think it's a fun and interesting concept. And I do think you could take some overall insight and apply some health guidance towards those things. But whatever. The purpose of this video is just to talk about it, put some thoughts out about what I am thinking with those concepts, and just talk about it and see if it generates any conversation. At the very most, it'll just kind of open the door for you guys to look into it more. So hopefully you like this conversation. If you have any comments, just type them in. Questions, type them in. And if you do like these videos, send them over to some of your friends. See if you could share them. And definitely, I'm going to this is my 2025, try to crank out videos, just brain dump as much as I can for you guys, so that, perhaps they can help you, if not now, then later. So I will see you on the next video. Take care.